We have some good news from Israel today. The number 3 on the wanted list, Israel's wanted list of Hamas terrorists, the number 3 in the leadership of Hamas, Marwan Issa, also known as the Queen of Spades, has been eliminated, just confirmed by a leaked conversation from Hamas inside the Gaza Strip. Israel has taken him out in an airstrike actually last week, but just been confirmed. Israel is continuing their very precise, targeted airstrikes of terrorists inside the Gaza Strip, like Marwan Issa, while also bolstering their security throughout Judea and Samaria due to a rise of attacks because the holiday of Ramadan, the Muslim holiday of Ramadan, has just begun in Israel. Netanyahu asked the same question that we here at the Israel Guys have been asking for quite some time now. How has the world, how has the international community lost their moral compass so quickly? We're going to talk about that and a lot more here on the show today. I'm Josiah, and this is the Israel Guys. That was a pretty cool video of the Israeli undercover police unit performing a surprise arrest on a wanted terrorist inside Bethlehem while he was standing at a falafel stand ordering falafels. Welcome to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of Jew hatred and anti-Israel propaganda, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. Welcome back to the show. This week we have quite a bit to talk about as this week launches out things happening inside the land of Israel. First, though, make sure to subscribe here on YouTube, hit that like button, hit the notification bell if you never want to miss an episode of the Israel Guys. Also check out our social media. All those links are down in the description below. Guys, make sure to sign up for the Israel Summit. The Israel Guys, we are hosting a Israel Summit, the Israel Summit in May in Nashville, Tennessee, May 20th to the 22nd. Guys, this is going to be a huge opportunity to stand with the nation of Israel, to learn more about what's happening and to learn how you can help and stand with the nation of Israel right now as they're in the midst of war and the world is trying to tear the land of Israel apart and give it away to Israel's enemies. We have a lot of amazing speakers, including a full-on concert by Israeli musician singer Yair Levy. You do not want to miss it. Click the link down in the description below to sign up for the Israel Summit today. All right, what is happening in Israel? It's just been confirmed by the leadership of Hamas, actually in a closed conversation, that Marwan Issa, who is the number 3 commander of Hamas's leadership, the Hamas terrorist leadership, has been eliminated in a targeted strike inside the Gaza Strip. Israel's military actually have been confident that the airstrike that they conducted earlier in the week had been successful in taking out this arch-terrorist, but they had not had the complete confirmation that he was actually killed in the strike until I think it was yesterday or the day before. According to the Khan Reshit Beit, did a report early yesterday morning saying that, quote, Hamas confirmed that Issa was killed in an airstrike a week ago and has been since buried under the rubble of the tunnel, together with one of Hamas's brigade commanders who was killed alongside with him. So this airstrike was a week ago. Israel had very good intelligence about where this terrorist was, where this leader of Hamas was, and they conducted a very precise airstrike of the tunnel he was located in. And guys, it has been successful, thank God. Another one of these evil, barbaric, arch-terrorists has been taken out, and the leadership of Hamas, the organization of Hamas, is much weaker because of it. We'll be right back to the show in just 1 second, but first, do you want to learn God's language but have no idea where to start? We have a solution for you. You need Israel 365's Psalms, Pray Like David edition. Unlike other Psalms, this edition preserves the original text, Hebrew text of the Psalms, comes with an English translation and a unique verse-by-verse transliteration. You'll learn to read, pronounce, and understand Psalms, connecting you to the timeless prayers of King David and leaving you with a better grasp of the Hebrew language, which is precisely what Israel needs from you right now. More than anything, they need our prayers, and you can do that from anywhere in the world, like the United States of America. But that's not the only way you'll support Israel when you purchase this edition of Psalms. A portion of all proceeds from the sale of these Psalms goes directly to supporting Israel in its defense against Hamas. The proceeds will go to purchasing essential gear and equipment for the brave soldiers, as well as necessities like food and hygiene products. So what are you waiting for? This is your chance to learn the true meaning behind the beautiful words of King David, all while helping Israel in its fight against evil Hamas. Visit the link in the description below to get your copy today, the Israel Bible Book of Psalms. Click the link in the description below. Speaking of airstrikes, Israel has been very successful in their targeted airstrikes, very effective in their airstrikes inside the Gaza Strip. Just over the last 24 hours, Israel has eliminated over 18 terrorists by either airstrikes, by sniper fire, or by shelling in the Gaza Strip. They're continuing their operation inside of Gaza. They're continuing to operate inside of Khan Yunis, taking out terrorists where they find them, continuing to discover more tunnels inside of the Gaza Strip. They're operating also south of Khan Yunis, and they're preparing, hopefully, to enter the last Hamas stronghold in Rafah. We're going to talk about more about that in just 1 second. But there are other threats. There are threats on other fronts in Israel as well. Obviously, one we haven't talked about a whole lot. We're trying to cover as more information comes out, is the war happening on Israel's northern border with Lebanon. Very likely we'll see some more escalation happening there very, very soon. But inside of Judea and Samaria, there's another front that is very, very often overlooked. Now, the Muslim holiday of Ramadan started last Sunday. And here in Israel, every time Ramadan comes around, every year Ramadan happens, there inside of Judea and Samaria, it's a time, actually not even just inside of Judea and Samaria, all of Israel, wherever there are Muslims celebrating Ramadan, it's a time where Jews in Israel are in more danger of being attacked than any other time of the year. And if you just think about that for a second, a holiday for a religious group, for a group of people comes around, and that time is more likely that those people will go out and commit attacks against other people. It seems like a very messed up society, very messed up religion, messed up ideology coming from the Muslims, namely inside of Israel. Just kind of a thought that's it's interesting to ponder if you think about it, that happening for any other religion, any other people group around the world. Unfortunately, this year with Ramadan is not an exception, and actually the threat level may even be much, much higher. Just in the last 2 weeks, we've seen a numerous number of terrorist attacks throughout Israel, several inside of Judea and Samaria, a few outside of Judea and Samaria as well in Israel South last week. The IDF Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, just visited the Binyamin region of Samaria on Friday to hold a situational assessment of the IDF forces inside of Judea and Samaria, recognizing that there is another basically internal war going on inside Judea and Samaria, falsely called the West Bank. So not only is Israel facing a war in Gaza, they're not only facing a war on Israel's northern border, an unofficial war up in the north yet, because there's yet to be an official declaration of war, but there's skirmishes happening back and forth. There's rocket fire constantly coming from Lebanon, and Israel is responding by taking out those rocket launching sites inside of Lebanon as well. It's an unofficial war, but in actuality, it is already a war that's waging up there in the north. And then you have what's happening inside of Judea and Samaria, the constant attacks against not only Israeli forces, the IDF inside of Judea and Samaria, the IDF who are manning security posts, who are keeping the road safe, who are guarding Jewish communities inside of Judea and Samaria, but also just against civilians who are standing at bus stops, against people that are eating in hummus restaurants, people that have stopped to pump gas at the gas station. They're in constant danger of being attacked and even killed by Palestinian terrorists who want all the Jews wiped off the face of the earth and pushed into the sea. And unfortunately, the holiday of Ramadan, it's supposed to be the holiest month for Islam, is a time where Muslims are much more likely and are even incited by the religious leaders of Islam. They're incited to go out and kill Jews during the month of Ramadan as well. So we'll continue to keep you updated on what's happening inside of Judea and Samaria, and please continue to lift up the people of Israel in your prayers for their safety, as there's this constant threat inside of Judea and Samaria, and like I said before, it's not just inside Judea and Samaria; it's all over the nation of Israel, wherever there are Muslims who are intent on destroying Israel and pushing all the Jews into the sea. All right. Back to the situation in Gaza, and this is actually very, very positive and hopefully and a hopeful look for Israel, because Israel right now is still on track to go into the last major Hamas stronghold of Gaza. I'm talking about Rafah. Now, yesterday, Netanyahu reiterated Israel's determination to enter Rafah, the last stronghold of Hamas. Why would they enter Rafah? To root out the last battalions of Hamas that are embedded and have rooted themselves inside that city of Rafah. And the entire world, including our president, Joe Biden, our Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, are having a fit. They're having a tantrum and pulling out even threatening Israel, saying you cannot go into Gaza, you absolutely can't go into Rafah, you absolutely cannot enter to take out these last Hamas battalions, because for some reason the leadership in the U.S., and it's not just the U.S., it's pretty much the entire international community is trying everything they can to desperately save Hamas. For what reason? Don't exactly know. It makes absolutely no sense from a practical and logical viewpoint. Unfortunately, not everything from the Biden administration is done from a practical and logical viewpoint. Anyway, different subject altogether. But this was Netanyahu's statement yesterday. I want to read the whole statement here because I think it's very, very key, and it's very insightful, and kind of gives just a very clear picture, a way to explain what's happening and why Israel needs to enter the city of Rafah down in South Gaza. Netanyahu said yesterday, quote, "Since the beginning of the war, we have been fighting on two fronts, the military front and the political front. On the political front, we have so far managed to allow our forces to fight in an unprecedented manner for 5 full months. But it is no secret that the international pressure against us is increasing. There are those in the international community who are trying to stop the war now before all of its goals are achieved. They do this by hurling false accusations against the IDF, against the Israeli government, and against the Prime Minister of Israel. They do this by trying to bring about elections now in the midst of the war. And they do this because they know that elections now will stop the war and paralyze the country for at least 6 months. So let's be clear. If we stop the war now before all its goals are achieved, it means that Israel has lost the war, and we will not allow that. Therefore, we must not give in to these pressures, and we will not give in to them. No international pressure will stop us from realizing all the goals of the war, which are eliminating Hamas, freeing the hostages, and ensuring that Gaza will no longer pose a threat against Israel. In order to do this, we will also operate in Rafah. This is the only way to eliminate the rest of the murderous battalions of Hamas, and this is the only way to exert the military pressure necessary to release all the hostages. To this end, we have approved the operational plans for the operation in Rafah, including the promotion of the steps to evacuate the civilian population from the battle zones. This is a necessary step towards the military operation." End quote. So I just thought what Netanyahu said there was just very, very important and very key, talking about what Chuck Schumer said last week, saying that Netanyahu has to go, basically calling for a regime change inside of Israel. This is one of the leaders of the American government inside the United States of America, is calling for Israel to oust their prime minister, to have elections now. And Netanyahu was right. It doesn't matter, guys, if you like Netanyahu, if you think what he's doing is correct, if you think somebody could be handling the situation a little bit better. Right now, if Israel were to hold elections, it would not be good for the nation of Israel and would basically end the war in Gaza. And that is not for Israel's best interest. It doesn't matter if maybe there would be somebody that could be a better prime minister than there's lots of different opinions on who would be the best leader for the nation of Israel, who creates the best security for Israel. That's very much debatable. It's up for debate. But putting all those things aside, what can't be debated is that if the elections are held right now, then the war would end, Hamas would remain alive, the hostages would remain inside of Gaza, and Israel would have that threat, continue to have that threat, in addition to the other threats they're facing, like I mentioned before, on the northern border with Lebanon and inside of Judea and Samaria. So elections inside of Israel right now are not a good idea. And even now there's a lot of protesters on Saturday night in Tel Aviv, people just calling for the release of the hostages and elections now. Those things, they may sound great, but in actuality, those things do not actually align with a practical application. Elections now would not solve anything for the hostages, unfortunately. The best way, and we've seen this, it seems like the best way to release the hostages, the most sure and quick way, is to exert military pressure on Hamas, to squeeze them so hard to eliminate all their fighters and put that pressure on them that they willingly give these hostages back to the nation of Israel. I think the most important message that Netanyahu conveyed to the world yesterday with his statement was after what he said about going into Rafah. And I'm going to read his quote here, because it's very, very important, and something that we at the Israel Guys have been saying now for weeks. Netanyahu said, quote, "To our friends in the international community, I say, is your memory so short? So quickly did you forget October 7th, the most terrible massacre committed against Jews since the Holocaust? So quickly are you ready to deny Israel the right to defend itself against the monsters of Hamas? Did you lose your moral conscience so quickly?" End quote. Guys, we've been saying this for several weeks now, but also I think Netanyahu putting this out there, it's really like a bold challenge for the international community. Unfortunately, I think it will just fall on deaf ears. There won't be really any response from this, but it very clearly just lays it out. The moral clarity that it seemed the world had turned to in the days, in the few days and weeks after October 7th. The moral clarity of standing up for Israel, of declaring that Israel has a right to defend itself, of declaring that Israel has every right to completely eradicate Hamas from the face of the earth. That moral clarity faded so fast. It faded faster than it even descended on the nations of the world. And now, the nations of the world, the international community, are telling Israel, you have no right to defend yourself. You have no right to go in and eradicate Hamas. Hamas needs to stay alive. They have no reasons for stating why the Hamas needs to stay alive. But just putting that up, exerting pressure on Israel. Guys, why isn't the world pressuring Hamas? Why is nobody sanctioning Hamas? Why is nobody calling on Hamas to release the hostages? Why is nobody calling on the nations, the world powers that fund Hamas, powers like Iran, powers like Saudi Arabia, people that pour in millions and billions of dollars into Hamas? Why is nobody exerting pressure on them to exert pressure on Hamas to completely surrender, to surrender all their terrorists, to surrender the hostages inside of Gaza? No. Instead, the world focuses on Israel. And we've seen this, guys, throughout the entire existence of the modern day state of Israel. And actually, if you look throughout history, you've seen this throughout the entire history of the Jewish people, which goes all the way back to biblical times. The world has a fascination with persecuting the state of Israel, with persecuting God's people. And I think it ultimately comes down to fighting against, and it's our fight in Western civilization, fighting against God. God chose the people of Israel. God chose the nation of Israel. They are his special people. He gave them a land. He gave them a promise. And for as long as history has been around, the nations of the world, those that are against what God wants, those that are against the God of Israel, have been standing against the Jews and against the land of Israel. Guys, now is the time we can stand up and we can help. We can stand with God, standing with his people, supporting the nation of Israel, speaking out on behalf of the people of Israel, and continuing to speak truth on behalf of the land of Israel and what God is doing here in the nation of Israel. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. Don't forget to subscribe and get the conversation going down below. Tell us where you're watching from. If you're a new watcher, a viewer of the Israel Guys, please write that down there in the comments. We love interacting with you there. Guys, remember, as always, tune out that fake news and tune into what is actually happening here in the land of Israel. We'll be back every day, Monday through Friday, with your direct connection to the land and people of Israel.